So let's get into the news. This is interesting. You just printed it this morning.
Yes.
Prosecutors seek to question Trump's lawyer, Corcoran.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the idea is to use the crime fraud exception, obviously, but they're also using the search warrant affidavit to get the search at Mar-a-Lago for the judge to allow this to happen. Your thoughts on all of this? This seems
Yeah,
like
full
obstruction.
disclosure,
Yeah.
I used to work with Evan Corcoran. He and I had a murder case in common decades ago at the U.S. Attorney's Office. I'm sorry to see the way he has chosen to go professionally, because anytime you are representing a defendant and you get hauled before the grand jury to testify about the crimes your client may have committed, that's not a good thing. And let me
Right.
tell you, Jody, rarely do prosecutors drag defense attorneys who are representing the target of the grand jury investigation in to testify. But boy, Jack Smith, I am pleased to see, is going 100 miles an hour, scorched earth, in the direction of accountability. You know, Evan Corcoran has gotten himself in a jam because it looks like he was being used by Donald Trump in furtherance of Trump's documents crimes. Now, we don't know if he was being used knowingly or unknowingly,
True.
but the bottom line is, as a lawyer, you cannot participate or facilitate the crimes of your client. If you do, your attorney-client privilege evaporates and you can be forced to.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like to AG, who we listened to on her show, Jack, that they're going after obstruction in this case.
They are, and that's like, it's kind of like shooting fish in the barrel,
Right.
because if you have property that belongs to the government, and Donald Trump did, he had
Right.
documents. Frankly, it doesn't matter if they were classified or not. They didn't belong to him.
Right.
The grand jury issued a subpoena. That's a lawful order from a court saying give them back. And Donald Trump didn't, and he hid them. And we found them. The FBI found them pursuant to a search warrant in his desk drawers in his office. And now recent reporting is that he had even more documents after the FBI search. That's obstructing justice. That's a pretty easy charge to prove. And I think that will be one of the marquee charges in a federal indictment of Donald Trump.
Well, with the reporting of the FBI not wanting to execute a search warrant, and the DOJ saying, well, wait a minute, we need to do that, I think getting the subpoena ahead of time, I think, makes their case stronger. And look, we were being as nice as possible to this guy, but he lied to us after the subpoena. He gave some stuff over, but we realized that there was other stuff. So even though the FBI, at least some people in the FBI, seem to be very supportive of Donald Trump, their insistence on being nice to him has bolstered, in my opinion, the DOJ's case.
And that's brilliant, right? If the FBI hesitated when they should have acted, all they ended up doing was strengthening the future criminal case against Donald Trump. That's a great point. And, you know, yes, I'm troubled if the FBI is being governed by politics. But listen, the FBI is made up of human beings, and they're going to have their own political views and beliefs and ideologies. But for gosh sakes, you can't let that creep into your work. I will tell you, as a federal law enforcement officer, albeit a prosecutor, not an FBI agent, for decades, you know, it was the cardinal sin to ever think about politics when you were investigating a case and trying to decide how to proceed, whether to indict or not. So this is disappointing. I don't have a lot of confidence in Chris Wray as the FBI director. And, you know, now we see some of the deficiencies in FBI leadership coming home to roost.
Yeah, it is unfortunate. Now, I just, excuse me, in the case against the Proud Boys, apparently the Justice Department leaked classified information to the defense. Whoops.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
During testimony, prosecutors shared internal FBI messages sent and received by Agent Nicole Miller. They were supposed to be scrubbed with any classified information, but apparently it was accessible in hidden sections of the Excel spreadsheet. So they learned of this snafu while the defense was grilling her in front of jurors. So what do you, is this, or is it a concern? It depends on the information, I would imagine.
Yeah, so I'm going to say I've been there, I've done that, where, you know, you are turning over mountains and mountains of evidence in discovery.
Right.
I always did it in paper because I am incompetent and computers make me nervous, but I know that's not the day and age we live in now.
Right.
So when they're turning over things that they call terabytes of information,
Right.
terabytes, it makes my megahertz, and I
Right.
don't know what that
It's a lot. It's a lot.
There's a joke in there
gotcha.
somewhere that I'm sure I've stole from somebody. But listen, these people who are involved in this prosecution are my former colleagues. Some of them were homicide prosecutors. I feel their pain because you try to turn over everything you think you have to turn over.
Right.
And then there are embedded lines in an Excel spreadsheet that should have been redacted that weren't. That's a nightmare,
Yeah.
particularly when it involves classified information. So listen, the judge took a pause in the trial for a couple of days. They're going to address this issue both practically to make sure there are no, national security implications of this stuff being turned over to defense attorneys.
Right.
And I'm not saying the defense attorneys are intending to misuse it,
Right.
but it's in their hands now.
Right.
And legally, what are the consequences with respect to this prosecution misstep? But you know what? They're going to move through this, I predict. They're going to get back on track. The prosecutors have just about finished presenting their case in chief. And then the interesting piece is the defense attorneys will present their case. And as we know, one of the defendants is trying to subpoena Donald Trump to testify in their defense. I wrote a piece about this for MSNBC Daily. I do not believe that subpoena will be successful.
Right.
And if it is Donald Trump, I can almost promise you we'll plead the fifth. He will not testify.
Oh, of course not. No, he wouldn't. I mean, with this, the thing that I find unnerving about this classified information was the questions were in front of the jury.
Mm-hmm.
So that to me is like, what did they discover? What came out to regular run-of-the-mill civilians that shouldn't have been? I would hope that the lawyers would have been kind of like, why should we be? I don't know. It's their defense, so whatever, I guess. Anyway, so Trump lost his defamation case against the Post finally for a second time. This is nice.
Yeah.
I like that.
We like good news.
Yeah, Judge Rudolph Contreras. I did that right. Said there's no actual malice in the report of the from the Post. He asked Trump's lawyers if they wanted to amend their complaint and be litigated, and they were unable to do this. Thus, bye-bye lawsuit.
Yep.
Thrown out. Yay. So I mean,
Trump has had a really bad week on so many fronts. Not only is he losing his own suits, but the Department of Justice weighed in and said, guess what, sport? Okay, I don't think they called him sport, but I call him sport. Guess what, sport? You don't have absolute immunity.
Yeah.
And the lawsuit that has been filed by Capitol Police officers and members of Congress who you endangered on January 6th can and will proceed against you. That is an important piece of foreshadowing, Jody, for what's about to happen in the criminal arena, because that helps pave a way for Jack Smith to bring federal charges for the insurrection.
And they were very specific on their wording, saying this has nothing to do with the criminal things. This is very civil, so that they didn't step on their own toes, it sounds like. And then it looks like Alvin Bragg might indict the man.
Yeah, I love this headline from the New York Times. Prosecutors signal criminal charges for Trump are likely.
Yes.
And let me just hit this real quick, and then I'm going to have to bounce because MSNBC is already calling me.
Okay. Okay.
No, that's okay. Let me finish this. They can wait.
They're early.
This is us here.
Yeah.
Boy, I hope they don't see that. Here's the thing. The last thing prosecutors do before they ask a grand jury to indict somebody is, at least in a white-collar case, we don't do this in violent crime cases.
Right.
We will invite the target of the investigation to testify. We can't subpoena them because they have a Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination, but they can certainly come in and waive that right and testify, and they can say, look, ladies and gentlemen of the grand jury, the prosecutors have it all wrong. Let me explain why I didn't really commit any crimes. Now, Donald Trump is not going to accept the invitation. He is not going to testify, but this is a tell. This is a tell that the next stop is an indictment for Donald Trump. Here's a fun fact. When we send those invitation letters to targets of the investigation, inviting them to appear before the grand jury, we have a name for that kind of a letter. We call it a Mae West letter. Now, who was Mae West? Well, people of a certain age will remember she was a Hollywood movie star beginning in the 1930s and 1940s, who was the queen of the one-liners at one point in time. And she has so many famous lines, but one of the big ones is she's talking to a gentleman in uniform. She said, you know, I always have liked the man in uniform. Why don't you come up and see me sometime?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That is the famous line. Mm-hmm. That's actually not exactly what she said, but we call these target letters, these invitations, Mae West letters. Why don't you come up and see the grand jury sometime?
Love it. That's
awesome.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Everybody tune into Peacock and watch his documentary series.
Yeah,
it's fantastic. Who Killed James Wan? Thank you, Glenn. Have fun on MSNBC.
Thanks, Jody. See you guys.
Bye.
All right.
Emergency 911. A friend of ours is bleeding in our house. Who was the person that stabbed him?
Investigators, forensics experts, true crime jocks. Nobody has seen anything like this one.
Robert Wan decided to spend the night with 3 friends.
We have their story that an intruder broke in, and Robert was stabbed 3 times.
1, 2, 3.
Bang! The story just took off from there.
The detectives walked into a surreal scene.
The level of depravity is stunning.
There were needle marks on his neck.
Something was very off.
You don't take 3 to the chest, lay there and die.
That's what makes this story so maddening.
This case has more questions than it has answers. There's no evidence of struggle.
There was almost no blood on the scene. Where is the missing blood?
When I die, the first question I'm going to ask God, who killed Robert Wan?